This actually kind of leads in from what we were just talking about, in fact. Does the best writer in science fiction change over time, and why?
I think they certainly do insofar as society changes. So what was considered perfectly acceptable, if not very popular, at one time goes out of fashion. And it's something that now, when you look at a lot of 50s, 60s, even 70s sci-fi, there's a lot of inbuilt homophobia, sexism, racism, and people kind of accepted that. And, you know...
Well, I'm going to jump in and say... and choke on my own words. I'm going to jump in and say, not everyone accepted it, but sometimes people had to remember that they had to work within this framework to get it published.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit like the very first episode of Star Trek, and it goes on about oh, I'll never get used to a woman on the bridge sort of thing. And you think, oh my God, it just makes you want to vomit.
That was actually brought up in that episode, though. The captain says, I can't get used to having a woman on the bridge. And then the camera pans over to number one, the first officer, who is a woman. And she just looks at him, and then he looks over and sheepishly says, I'm sorry, number one, I forget you're a woman. And they were playing with the idea of that.
Yeah, it does say a lot about how the world was.
I absolutely agree, but then again, that's one of the ways that science fiction operates.
Yeah, but no,
it's a commentary on the world.
Yeah, but to go outside science fiction, to give you an idea of how social acceptability changes, look at the black and white minstrel show. Big entertainment in the 60s and 70s, and now you look at it and you go, oh my God, you know, how could anybody ever watch that and actually be entertained as opposed to appalled? But, you know, that's how things change. And I think it's something that we've mentioned things like in the past about Arthur C. Clarke's A Fall of Moondust. It's awful, stilted, horrible, formulaic read. But once upon a time, that was considered a classic of sci-fi.
Yeah.
And now it doesn't work. And there's the Sci-Fi Masterworks series, we keep coming back to these. There's others in that series that don't really do it for me. There's a lot of Philip K. Dick. And the thing about Philip K. Dick, there's like some stuff, things like Flow My Tears, The Policeman Said, is an incredible book. I love that book. And there's others like Time Out of Joint, and also A Scanner Darkly I couldn't get into very easily, and Valis. You know, there's other books where you think, no, actually, they're just not working out. They're considered a classic because at some point in the past they fit with what society was expecting and wanted. But society has changed, and the only thing that hasn't changed is that there's almost like this memory that this was a classic. You know, it's kind of how when you go back to watch episodes of Bottom, and it's not aged well, but at the time we loved it.
Well, yeah, I always found it a bit puerile at the time, but I watched it and I was entertained. Bottom, for those who aren't old enough to remember it, or came from a different country, of course, was this very, well, it was
hooligans, basically.
It was hooligans. It was intentionally offensive.
Yeah.
But in a way that felt more like a pantomime than doing it out of malice.
It was born out of the alternative comedy circuit of the 80s. So they were effectively, if you ever seen The Young Ones, it was Richie and Eddie got older. They were no longer students. And that's how I always looked at it. I'm not sure whether they were supposed to be the same characters, but Richie and Eddie were the characters that the actors had played in The Young Ones for me, but just no longer a student.
Well, one of them was still called Eddie.
What was the other one called?
I can't remember.
No, because in The Young Ones, the Adrian Edmondson's character was Vivian.
Right, so it's not the same characters.
No, but I always think of them as being the same characters, just older and still a pair of losers.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing.
But you laugh at them, not with them.
That was always the case. And now when you watch it, it's like, what is this? Why did we like it? And I think that's one of the problems with any kind of media. Like, you write down something that is of its time, or ahead of its time, and then its time passes.
Yeah, with like case in point, another case in point, Abigail's Party, 70s kind of comedy stroke social commentary. It's unwatchable now, but at the time it was a big deal. And then you look at other comedy series that have not dated well. Sometimes they come round on some of these satellite channels.
Or any of the books that are behind us. Now I'm thinking about it. All of these books here are a Penguin Classics collection.
Shelf after shelf.
She's got hundreds of them.
Yeah.
Most of these I can't read.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Like, I mean, let's have a look. Some of the Charlotte Bronte, Emily Bronte books, they're of their time and they don't really work. But then again, you get others that transcend the changes in society. So I would argue things like Silas Marner by George Eliot. That book for me never ages. It's always a good read.
Or Frankenstein or Dracula.
Yeah.
They've managed to, I don't know why, what it is about them. The writing isn't always great, but they're still readable and they're still enjoyable. And I'm wondering, at what point will Frankenstein, because it's the older one, become as difficult to get into as Shakespeare is for the average child?
No. I think there's some things which transcend changes in society, and they've somehow tapped into universal being good. I mean, some of H.G. Wells's stuff, like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, or Journey to the Centre of the Earth, or Around the World in 80 Days, they're still enjoyable. They're still good reads, despite their age. And then you get other things that haven't dated well. Some of Charles Dickens' stuff really is, you have to work to read it. And
although the Pickwick Papers, which is ironically his first book, is still as good now as it was then. I can pick that up and read that and enjoy it right now.
Yeah, and then there's things like Grossmith and Whedon, A Diary of a Nobody. It was written in, I think it's either 1899 or 1901. It's around about the turn of the last century. And yet that is a superb book. So it's such a funny social commentary. And when you read it, you really you can really get behind Mr. Pooter and the fact that he's an insufferable prat, but his heart is in the right place. And, you read things like that, and it's like it could have been written yesterday. So there are still books that transcend changes in society, and then there are others. Everybody thinks like, oh, this is the big thing. Like, was it Sophie's Choice or something? There was a book that was big in the sort of late 80s, early 90s. Yeah. Sure, it was Sophie's Choice, and now nobody ever talks about it. But back then it was like, oh, you must read this.
Every year has this flash in the pan must-read thing.
Yeah, Here Today, Gone Tomorrow
Captain
books.
Corelli's Mandolin.
Yes.
Went from being published and a film made about it in what, a year?
Yeah.
And no one talks about it now.
Yeah, Birdsong, Sebastian Faults.
Yeah, similar stuff. So, are the best authors in sci-fi the ones that somehow managed to tap into this universal good, as you called it?
I've just made that the universal good thing up. That sounds like something out of Leibniz and philosophy, but no, I think you can't judge a new book as being either one of these pivotal greats or a flash in the pan. Things have to be around for a while, and that's why pretty much all the authors we've talked about have been. We're talking about books that they wrote in the 60s or 70s or even 80s.
Well, not Neil Stephenson, Greg Egan were 90s and 2000s.
Yeah, but that's still coming up on, like 15, 20 years.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's old, yeah.
I suppose
Millennials are voting now.
Yeah, millennial babies are.
So, it's, I think, look at stuff like, what's it called? 50 Shades of Grey.
I'd rather not look at 50 Shades of Grey.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah, 50 Shades of Bath Christmas Market. But, no, it was like the big deal. And what you saw was an awful lot of copycat things. People trying to cash in on that wave. And now, it's just like, Here Today, Gone Tomorrow, all the sparkling vampires, try and all that. That stuff is fading away. There'll be the next big thing. And yet then you get stuff like Harry Potter, which has sustained this love so far. And, give it another 10, 15 years, are we going to see that still sustaining that love?
I think we will, because it's tapped into something that Enid Blyton managed to tap into, which is another example of a person whose work has to be disassociated from the person. Because she was insufferable, apparently.
Yeah, but when you read a lot of the books, there's some that are somewhat racist, but there are others which, they're still pretty reasonable books. I like Famous Five. I like The Adventurous Four. Now, there's a series that you just don't see out and about anymore. But then there's other ones like Magic Faraway Tree and Children of Cherry Tree Farm. But then equally, there's ones which, you think, she stood the test of time. Actually, she wrote hundreds of books, and it's only a handful have stood the test of time. You go try and find Tales of Toyland, or, there was a book about gollywogs.
Oh man, she was big on that, yeah.
Well, the thing, but again, it goes with that's what society was like. But it's now reached a point where it's very uncomfortable to read some of these things.
Yeah.
I know I've got an original 1950s print of Five Go Off to Camp, and I don't suppose a lot of people may actually not quite realise this, but it drops the old N-bomb in there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been quietly edited out over the years. But there's an N-bomb in Five Go to Camp.
Which reminds me of, if you ever look in shops these days and you see the complete works of H.P. Lovecraft, they're not the complete works of H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah, the racist ones are left out.
Especially one particular one, On the Origin of, and then the N-word.
Yeah.
It is the most racist thing. And a lot of the time, people say, oh, well, he was a product of his times.
No, he wasn't. He was a colossal racist even by his time.
Exactly. That's the point I'm trying to make. A lot of people looked at him at the time and questioned why he was that virulently racist.
Yeah, they went steady on now.
But again, another guy who has to be separated from his work, because the things he brought to horror and to genre sci-fi.
Yeah, Lovecraftian horror is a kind of like a genre, a franchise.
Yes.
And it's because of some of the stuff he wrote.
But he was a racist anti-Semite who lived in the black area of New York and married a Jewish woman.
It's one of those things. It's like,
he's an oddity.
Although I can't be racist. My best friend is black, sort of.
Oh, he's a homophobe. I had a best friend who was gay.
Did you know they were gay?
Yes.
And that's the weird thing. It's like the
man was a living contradiction.
Yeah, and it just kind of sums up humans. We're able to hold on to diametrically opposed and incompatible views, and this juxtaposition quite happily can live in our minds without causing any kind of a breakdown.
Lovecraft is actually an interesting example of the us and them theory of how humans work, because there's always that case with racists who think, oh, we don't like them, they're not like us, but Joe's okay because Joe's one of us, but Joe's one of them according to their definitions, but he's one of them because he's a friend.
Yeah. He's our weird foreigner.
Which exactly, that's pretty much it. It shows up just how stupid the idea of racism can be. And in fact, it is.
I think a lot of things like this, that it's not in everybody, but in a lot of people, it's down to it's easy to hate and dislike the unknown, but once you get to know people, people are people the world over.
The unknown becomes known, and you like it. So Lovecraft, I think, actually demonstrates what I wanted to say about this question. He was kind of well known and really liked in the pulp fiction circles. But the moment he was dead and wasn't producing any more work, all of it just disappeared. And no one was interested, no one wanted to publish anything from him until much, much later, when suddenly he's brought back in, he's interesting again. Writers who have been influenced by him when they were reading the pulps early in their careers have talked about him and brought his stuff back, and then all of a sudden he's a big thing again.
Yeah.
So I think, certainly in weird tales and horror, it definitely does have a cycle of who is the big thing.
Yeah, and you find sometimes you get works which were considered pivotal works for their time go out of print. And that was, again, I know we keep harking on to the Sci-Fi Masterworks collection.
But there's a reason why that was such a good collection.
The background to that collection was that one of the editors at Golands couldn't believe that so many of these pivotal sci-fi books, in their opinion, were actually out of print. You couldn't buy a new copy of them. And a lot of that was about making accessible some of these books. And what I found is that, yes, some of them have stood the test of the time, but I would say at least 2/3 of those books have not.
I have to agree. So I think we both agree on this one. The person who is the top of the game changes as the game changes.
Yeah. And there's some people that do kind of ride the wave all the way, and then there's others which do fall by the wayside, even after having had meteoric success over a short period of time.
I think we can end it there.
Okay.
Right, well, this has been a fantastic resurgence of the podcast.
Yeah, Sci-Fi Chat for the win.
As you've probably noticed, we are splitting these topics up into separate videos. So the idea is that at some point, once we've made a few more of these, you'll just be able to sit and cycle through them as if it's one long conversation. And
that's the plan. Although we will change, we will become people from the future
and from the past, depending on how well the algorithms stick everything together.
That's the thing that scares me about television work, is that, you know, in 20, 30 years' time, I'll be surfing some of the satellite channels and go, oh, I used to be young.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, Jen. Even if TV wasn't around, when you get older, you could still look back and think, oh, I used to be young. Because that's how time works.
Yeah.
Except in science fiction, when you get time travel.
Yeah.
See you later.